You're listening to Bigger Than Belief, real stories about real faith with real people whose belief is unbelievable. I'm your host, Adam Duxter. Thank you for tuning in to Bigger Than Belief. Today is Thursday, April 30th, and today I'm excited because we're going to play into the playoff fever we've been experiencing here in Minnesota. Our Wilds tonight have a chance to move on to the next round of the postseason with a win. And as the state continues to rally around this team, we thought, what a perfect time to release the interview we did with today's guest, Nate Prosser. Prosser is a Twin Cities native born in Elk River. He was the hometown guy in the Wild for years, spending more than a decade in the NHL. Today, he's a dedicated dad, a husband, and he's in a brand new stage of his career. But one thing throughout it all has been very constant, which is his faith. Before we dive into our conversation with Nate, I will ask, please, if this is your first time listening to Bigger Than Belief, or you've been tuning in weekly, take a second, if you can, please, and rate us 5 stars wherever you're listening. That helps us be seen by even more people than you might realize. Also, if you like this episode with Nate, please take a minute to review us in the app where you listen. Again, this just helps us be seen by even more people. Folks, I'm very excited for this conversation today, and I really think you will like it. So now, without further ado, here is Nate Prosser. All right, well, we now welcome on a very special guest, someone who I've been excited to sit down and talk with just because you are Minnesotan through and through, not only in your background, but also just in how most people know you as an athlete who spent years representing the state. It is Nate Prosser, NHL veteran, NHL alum now.
Yeah.
Still getting used to saying that?
Yeah. Me? I'm definitely getting, it's been probably 5 years now, and, wearing an old Flyers coat, and, I'm still on the ice a lot, with my kids and coaching. Definitely still have a passion for it, like have the Wild on at night a lot, but definitely miss the game. Yeah.
NHL longtime player. You are a dad of many kids, and you're also a believer, which is why I'm really excited to have you on this show to talk specifically about that. When you think about faith in your life, where does that start? That's how I want to kind of begin this conversation. Where does that start for you?
There's an understanding of what my foundation is and why I am here on this earth, and that's to love others and be a disciple. And when you say yes to Jesus, there's someone that said you say yes to full-time ministry, and that kind of stuck with me. Throughout my 39 years of living so far, it's kind of been the motto of like I want to be a light for him. So when people see me, they don't see Nate Prosser, ex-hockey player or dad or husband or neighbor. They see Jesus living in me. And that's kind of, I want them to see the light, that's what's in me.
You grew up just north of, Minneapolis in Elk River. Was that faith something that was in your house as a kid? Was it something where your parents were like, hey, we believe and we're taking you with us? Or what's the earliest you can remember being like, yeah, I think this is for me and will be part of my life?
Yeah, I grew up in a Christian household, and, my dad's got a cool story. My mom's got a cool story where there wasn't much Christianity or faith in their upbringing, and they both decided to be followers of Jesus around age 18 when they were graduating high school, and starting a family, starting their own life together. And it's amazing to I tell this story quite a bit too. Is like that one decision my dad made to say yes, my household's going to be Christians, and that one decision wasn't just for him. It's amazing to see the amount of branches and limbs and that have come from that with friends and cousins and grandparents and just the amount of other impacts and influences that it's had on the people around us and our peers and our family members. And so definitely grew up in a Christian household. I have an older brother and older sister that, really made sure, like, Nate, you have Jesus in your heart, right? You have Jesus in your heart. I mean, it's really almost like jammed down my throat, when I was a young kid, and there definitely came a moment middle school-ish where, where my parents, they always enforced church, Wednesday night youth services and Sunday morning church. So those Wednesday night youth services, I remember going to Emmanuel Christian Center and making it my own and realizing that this isn't about my parents' faith. It's not about my brother and sister's belief. It's kind of, I got to make this my own and grow with him and make it my own personal relationship with him. And I did that. And, now that, how much of that foundation had on my life where, playing hockey, everyone around me is like hockey, eat, breathe, sleep, train, everything hockey, that I always knew, what was number one in my life. And I needed a telescope to see number two. Jesus was number one, my entire life. And it still is today. And I want my kids to know that. And I want them to, I want to fan their flames for Jesus as much as I can. I got 4 daughters. I know that, I'm the head of the household to, making sure we're getting to church, making sure we're doing our devotionals, making sure we're having worship music on, making sure we're praying together. All those little things that, will ultimately have an impact on their hearts.
Do you think about it though, because I heard you say it was almost heavily enforced when you were a kid, and you hear stories of people where that was the case for them as kids, and then the moment they get the opportunity to do things for themselves, I'm going in an entirely different direction. Do you ever think, what was it about you as a kid where you said, I do have a desire to make this my own, rather than, hey, this is just the belief of my parents and this is enforced on me, but it's not, something I'm doing actively myself?
Yeah. You know what? I was fortunate to get around some good quality friends in Elk River when I was growing up that, didn't get into the party scene, didn't get into the trash, and some that were Christians. And, I liked how they had a different joy, different kindness, different, just there's something different about them that, I'm like, man, I want that too. So, iron sharpens iron is so true, where the people you surround yourself with will ultimately have a big impact on who you are, I think, me being able to find those certain people, when I was young and growing up in Elk River, those impacts affected the way I wanted to pursue Jesus and grow deeper with him. And, but that doesn't go to say oh man, my walk and my faith journey has all been cupcakes and rainbows. No, it's been, we all go through different walks with Jesus. And, definitely there was moments where, hey, I'm, in college and, away from mom and dad, lost some structure, not attending church as much, not throwing on my worship music, not getting into the word, where all of a sudden you start straying a little bit. And, not saying I was ever didn't love Jesus. It's just, I wasn't drawing nearer to him. And, and I think a lot of people go through those phases of life. And there's a quick self-realization that as soon as I was done with college, I was going to get married. I was going to start my own family. I was, going on my hockey journey. It was almost like I needed to rededicate my heart and myself to the Lord. And so again, not everyone's faith journey is just going to go, yep, perfect. I'm growing deeper, each and every day. That's what we strive for, but we fail at that all the dang time. I still do. I fail all the dang time, every hour. But ultimately, like I started this, is I just want to be a disciple for him, right? And that's end of story.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, you talk about faith being the first thing, and the second thing, maybe you needing a telescope to see it. It's so far down, but hockey is something that I've had to come to learn to know and understand as a Minnesota, transplant. But I can only imagine the amount of time that you spent as a kid at a rink or playing hockey or traveling or doing this, that, or the next thing. It had to have been super consuming of everything you were doing. How did you balance, finding time for your faith and then also finding time to play hockey at an elite level? Because I'm guessing there was a lot of stuff you had to physically miss because you were just so busy doing hockey. For sure.
I mean, when I was growing up, it was different than what it is now. When I was growing up, it felt like there was more of a understanding that, okay, we're going to not schedule practices on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. because we're going to respect, church time. And we're not going to schedule it on Wednesday nights from, 5 to 7:30 because we're going to respect it's youth night. Now it's like there's such an extreme push in youth sports that it's like, even with my kids, I mean, they schedule everything right through Sunday mornings. It's like there's, so we have to actively find time to, okay, if we're not making it Sunday mornings to our church service, we're going to find time maybe in the afternoon or night to watch it or have it up on the TV where we can still, hear the message. But it definitely was a ton of hours, really consumed a lot of my family's life because my older brother did it too. He's 3 years older than me. And we definitely had a drive and a grind that wanted to be hockey players. And so there was a time commitment to that. But, my brother was a great role model for me. He got into, instruments and, started, getting on worship teams at churches and doing the drums and guitar and singing and, just having a role model that I could look up to that made it look, made it look like, Christianity is a cool thing to be a part of, was pretty eye-opening for me. And that made me want to pursue it at a younger age in middle school where, okay, I want to know more. I want to, like I said, make this my own relationship,
That's super cool. And I'm curious with hockey though, especially, one of our first guests we ever had on the show was Bill Butters. And he talked about just the relationship between hockey and faith compared to maybe other sports. You see like baseball or football, where it feels like not only is there more of a connection with faith across those sports, but there have been professional athletes who are very outspoken, about their faith and popular. What is it about hockey and faith that feels like there maybe is not as great of a connection with the sport? I mean, what was your experience? And were you ever kind of the odd man out, so to speak, carrying your faith with you throughout your career?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely some uncomfortable moments throughout my career. Once people found out I was a Christian, and I wanted all my teammates. I probably played with 10,000 different teammates. I wanted all 10,000 to know, like, he's a believer in Jesus. He's one of those Christian guys. Was there times where I got made fun of a little bit for it? Yeah, and that's okay. But I really cared about my relationships and with my teammates and being a good team guy. That I always just wanted to meet people where they were at. So if we had guys in the locker room that were more on the outside looking in as far as friendships and being a part of the group, I always wanted to be around those guys and get them more involved and so definitely I could talk on this for days. I mean, honestly, days. Like there's moments that kind of showed me that Jesus is putting me in different locker rooms, and there was a reason for it. Christianity and hockey don't mesh, kind of like what you're saying, the way they do in other sports. Baseball, they have huge chapel programs where most of the team are showing up on Sunday mornings before they go out on the field. They have, football, there's the prayer circle at the 50-yard line where there's, 40 or 50 guys around the center of the field after games. They don't really show that much, but you'll see it every now and then, and phenomenal. And there was a while there when in hockey where if you were a Christian, you didn't even want to really tell people about it because it made it look like, or made you seem soft, and someone that didn't have a dog in them, right? And I actually wanted to show the opposite, where I wanted to play like a dog and make sure like people saw like this guy is a grinder, like the grandma in the upper deck. I wanted them to see, oh man, look at the way 39 works on the ice. He's a dog out there. And
yeah. I think I heard you say that in another interview. Like someone specifically told you that, like, oh, you're a Christian. Yeah. Like I've heard X. What was that conversation that you had?
Yeah, it was my first year pro. My trainer and kind of just came up to me, and I don't know. I don't think he knew I was a Christian yet, but I started talking to him about church. I think a little bit, and he's like, I don't get really involved with that. They're just feels like they're just a bunch of pansies and hypocrites. And I'm like, okay, those are maybe the two worst chirps you can throw at me. So I kind of took that to heart, and I'm like, not to like the rest of my career I'm gonna prove this guy wrong. It was more like kind of got put into my mind as like, all right, I'm a sinner and fall short of the glory of God like I said, every hour, every day, that I'm not going to be judgmental. I'm not going to cast a stone on certain guys that are sinning because I sin too. So I think, I was able to gain a lot of closer relationships and build relationship equity with a lot of teammates because of my attitude and just that, making sure like I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I'm not going to be judgmental. I'm not only going to talk the talk, but I'm going to walk the walk. Where people are going to see something different about me. If they ask me, okay, yep, let's talk about it. Mm-hmm. This is what I believe. This is who I am. Hockey's, is a part of my life. It's what I do, but it's not who I am. I'm a child of God, and I was able to have a lot of cool conversations throughout my career, on stuff like this, and involved in being in the hot tub with some guys or in the sauna or, having a beer after the game or, something like that where, just so many cool moments that, felt like Jesus was tapping on my shoulder. He's like, yep, it's time, to bring me up or talk about me here. And a lot of cool moments throughout it.
How often would teammates ask you just directly like, hey, I know this is what you believe, this is what I've heard, or what is this about? How common was that for you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, at least a few handful of times throughout the year, where, guys was more so maybe around Christmas or Easter, or, guys would ask about, different church services, or when I got out of chapel, and it involved Bill Butters, he was our chaplain, and, we'd get out of there and walk back in the locker room, and Chris Stewart would, yell across the locker room, "Pros, spit some knowledge at me." Like, what'd you just learn in chapel? Like, let me hear some knowledge. And so I'd kind of say, all right, you want to know? And all of a sudden I'd yell it back across the locker room where all of a sudden you had 8 guys listening, and, more conversations could, start out from that. And so, yeah, there, a lot of, my good conversations stemmed around church or chapel or why are you always positive even though you're getting scratched for 3 or 4 weeks straight, and okay, you actually really want to know why? This has nothing to do with hockey. I have something in me that gives me peace, joy, love, kindness that passes all understanding. Like I'm a Christian, and and Jesus gives me those things, whether I'm playing in a game or I'm up in the press box watching. So you have such freedom, knowing that you have Jesus.
You talk though about seeing other sports. Was there ever a part of you that's like, man, why is it not hockey? Where you have baseball, where like you said, there's almost there's good portions of teams that are all going together, to a chapel service, or you have football where you have players, before and after the game, kneeling in a circle with one another, and it's very visible. But hockey, it feels like maybe there isn't as much of faith on the forefront, or even just what you've described. I mean, have you ever thought like, why is that?
Yeah, I mean, I get asked that a lot. I think that's kind of changing right now. The landscape's kind of changing. I'm seeing a lot of young, guys getting into the NHL and AHL that are, Christian players that, are more outspoken on it. But maybe it goes back to kind of what I said, is like you were kind of viewed as, soft. So if a GM found out maybe hey, that's the Christian guy that, I don't know, maybe it had an impact on your contracts or how long you're going to play, or, yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think a lot of baseball and NFL, a lot of those players come from the South and the Bible Belt, where, there's some kind of, church faith aspect to their upbringing, where maybe a lot of the kids that are coming from the North, up, Canada and northern states, it's so, we don't go to church on the weekends. We have hockey tournaments on the weekends. Why would we go to church on Sunday morning? We have the championship game, in Blaine, right? So, I think maybe the baseball and football had those sacred times off, where hockey's that's tournament time usually.
I am curious to kind of pivot in our conversation a little bit. Anytime I talk to someone who's an athlete, especially an athlete at a high level, just because I can't imagine the amount of time and effort and focus it took to get to where you were. And then you get to a point where you're not playing anymore. You're not playing professionally. How much of an identity shift is that for you? And was there a part of your faith that maybe was impacted by that, by all of a sudden, you've been a hockey player your whole life, and now you're not anymore. You're done. I mean, how hard is that for you on your identity, or was that for you on your identity? And what does that look like for you now to shift into something new?
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to start by saying the transition's hard for everybody. It just is. Like I've had a lot of conversations with guys that really struggle with it or have done well with it. I wouldn't say well, maybe just decent at it. No one really does well with it. Like it's hard. It's hard to put everything that you've ever strived for and dreamed about and, made it there and played till you're 33 or 37 or 40. And then it just kind of, okay, you're at the mountaintop, and then it just kind of, everything's structured. I mean, we had our itineraries for every day. Just everything was planned and everything was structured, and all of a sudden that's gone, and that piece kind of just goes away, and there's really no anything in place to like kind of ease the pain for you. It's just like it's gone, and okay, now I'm just at home, and what's so nice is I have a wife that just has been a rock star behind me the whole time, that shares my love of Jesus, and that we have a vertical marriage where we want people to see Jesus through our marriage, even that we want people to see, oh man, like look at their marriage, and not see like, okay, they're holding hands, or they're I'm opening a door for her, or they're going on dates. I want them to see Jesus in us, and then that's what we strive for, and we push each other to grow deeper and to get into our words more, and I think growing up, again, like I had my dad and my older brother that were just rock solid with kind of the totem pole of life, like what's number one? Hockey, or sorry, faith. Faith is number one. Faith is number one. And that never shook. It never shook. And number two is family, relationships, school, grades, hockey. I mean, hockey's down, and it never got wonky. It never really got shaken. Faith was always there, and because of that, I always knew hockey was going to come to an end. I always knew, I'm just going to strive to play as long as I can. I was undrafted. I didn't know if I was going to play a year. I ended up playing 11 years of pro hockey. That just felt blessed to play that long. And as soon as I got done, there was really no question of when it was time for me to retire, because I was out in Philadelphia my last year by myself. My wife and my 4 daughters were here. And it's almost like written on the wall for me that I had to get back. I had to be a dad. I had to be a husband. And my kids needed me around. And I started to see how much of an impact it had on my kids with moving and me being gone, and that I really didn't have much time to blink or even think about the transition.
Yeah.
Or I'm right in the ringer.
You're in it.
I'm in it. I have 4 girls that are what were their ages at the time? At a 9, 7, 5, and 2-year-old at home.
Yeah.
So it's like I can't think about dang, should I keep training and trying to go back and playing it? No, I wanted to give my girls some routine and structure and roots planted. So I knew okay, it's time to come home and like I said, be a dad and husband, and lead these 5 women the way I need to.
It's interesting hearing you say that. One, because I can understand and maybe empathize a little bit with, like you said, I mean, when you have little kids at home, you don't have time to feel sorry for yourself, because you walk in and you're needed essentially right away.
Yeah.
But I am curious from a purpose standpoint. I mean, you talked about identity, where because hockey isn't, your identity, when you have that transition, it's a little bit easier to navigate. But when you start thinking about purpose and just your purpose for life and why you're here, I mean, how do you view your purpose for what's next now that you're done playing, and what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So, after this June of 2021, I finished out in Philly. I get home. Some of the conversations I had with my wife here in Minnesota when I was out there was she's in the grind. She's in the thick of it. I couldn't imagine her job compared to mine. I was, doing a little hockey in the mornings, and then, hanging with a buddy and playing video games at night. I almost felt like I was living a bachelor life out there, and she was in the grind of raising 4 girls. So she's like, Nate, I totally get why Britney Spears buzzed her head. I'm like, oh my gosh, make sure I'm not coming back to a buzzhead wife. So I got back and I just wanted to take everything off her plate, So the focus was, all right, I'm just going to take a year off. I'm going to take 12 months of just kind of, she said, Nate, I just want to walk Target by myself with a Starbucks in hand. I'm like, I think I can make that work. I think I can, handle the kids for, that amount of time where, go do that type stuff. So, so took the year off and just really focused on kind of what's next. And obviously being a dad and husband. And so I just kind of went on my phone, being from Minnesota and born and raised here, I just kind of text anybody and everybody that, would kind of go have a coffee with me or have a breakfast with me or lunch, and just kind of got a feel on, the next step, what, like you're saying, purpose, identity, first and foremost, I know what my identity is, and whether that's a hockey player or as a neighbor or as a coworker or as a teammate, I know what my identity is. But purpose, I wanted to get a feel on kind of what day-to-day looks like for an insurance or a banker or a real estate or anything and everything. And I met my boss now is Brian Slipka. He's a owner of True North, and very faith-driven man, very value, moral-driven man that just kind of was different. And with my conversation that I had with him, that I'm like, man, I want to draw nearer to that. Like that kind of has a solid feel for me. And he just said, you know what, Nate, God's timing on this, like, want to get you involved, but let's just kind of wait on God's timing. And so just kind of, left the meeting and had a good feeling about it. I'm just like, all right, I'm just, prayed about it and kind of, we all need something to wake up for and have a purpose for. It's kind of what what you're alluding to. So that this was kind of going to be my purpose. Like, well, what am I waking up on Monday morning and Tuesday and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday mornings and striving and grinding for, now? And so like a month or two later, he called me and said, hey, Nate, I'm, acquiring a co-packer down in Lonsdale called Lonsdale Packaging. You want to be, the portfolio manager down there? And I'm like, co-packer? I don't even really know a whole lot about that. I don't know really the ins and outs or what's going on, but yeah, let's do it. So went down there. I was down there for a few years, learned so much, learned so much. Really good community down there of people. And it really was eye-opening for me to, be back into kind of what I learned in college. I went to school for economics, and, looking at spending summaries and the P&Ls and, stuff like that. So I kind of got back into that and being a part of that. So that was almost like I was getting my business degree again, on the job. And then, over the last couple, year and a half ago, he said, you want to, we're acquiring more packaging companies. You want to get into sales? And I'm like, never done sales, but yeah, like kind of was like me through my career. I mean, you say, Nate, you want to go block shots? Yeah, I'll go do that. Or do you want to be, in the press box? Yeah. Okay, I can do that. Or do you want to, try, doing this or that, or, yeah. I've always just kind of been the team guy. Then, so when he asked me that, I'm like, yeah, I'll be the team guy. I want to give this a run. So that's what I'm doing now. And definitely been a great organization with a lot of good leaders, a lot of Christian leaders, which is, been really fun to be around.
What keeps you coming back to your faith? I mean, I'm sure it sounds like something that is guiding you, through that. But I mean, even after all these years and everything that you've done with your life and just your career and your family now, I mean, what are the things that keep you returning or keep you focused on your faith? Well, why make that choice?
Oh man, I don't know if anyone's asked me that question before. I think ultimately I've seen the goodness of God. I lived out my dream. Now looking back on it, it's so amazing to look at how much of a hand he had in guiding me and having me walk in his light and his path through my career, that I know the goodness of God, and I want others to know it as well. And I want it specifically my girls. Like I said, I want to get to heaven someday knowing that my 4 girls are so set in their foundation of Jesus that there's no doubt that I'll see you there when you guys get there, and we're all gonna leave this earth sometime. And there's no greater freedom than knowing we're gonna go when that time comes. And I know that my name's written there, and nothing greater.
I do want to circle back around then to ask. Yeah.
So what I was going to say is now, like whether it's in a week or whether it's in 50 years, I want to live out these days for him, and grow deeper with him.
How much do you appreciate now your parents? Because you started by talking about you grew up in that household. And you get to by middle school, and it's like, yeah, of course, that's what I'm going to do. You talked about your older brother. You talked about, your parents. now that you have kids that are that age and maybe they're going through that time.
Yeah.
I mean, how different is it for you to be on the other side of that, to be, now you're the dad.
Yeah.
And now they're the kid.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's, you look at how your parents raised you and you kind of be like, they were kind of dumb in that way, or they're really good in that way, or they're, whatever it might have been. They did the best they could. And, I love my parents. They raised us phenomenally. And, now, like you said, when I see my kids have a heart to go to Wednesday night church services and invite 8 of their friends. I mean, like me and my wife are like, let's have everyone over after school. We'll buy the pizza. We'll bring you guys all there. You guys go there and then have parents pick you up after, and we want to be the house that's like the open door and make sure that people know like what's front and center in the Prosser household. And there are a bunch of Christians that live for the Lord. And so whenever I see any of my daughters that have that are eager to get to church, or eager to pray or listen to Brandon Lake on their Alexas, or eager to sing worship songs in the car, it's like, yeah, that's what I want. That's what I want. I feel like I'm doing well as a dad when I see that stuff.
Last thing I want to ask you about is, what is the message to a young hockey player? Someone who's on their way up, who says like, it's either or. It's like either I prioritize my faith or I prioritize hockey, but like these two things cannot coexist. It's just too much time, one or the other. I mean, how often do you have those conversations, first of all? And I guess, what is that message you would want to share to someone who's young in hockey, but also is considering their faith as well? Yeah.
No, I love mentoring. There's few guys that I talk to on occasion that are Christian hockey players that just kind of struggle with the stresses of the hockey life. The ups and downs, the anxieties of free agencies, the anxieties of not playing as much as you think you should be, all that stuff, and ultimately it goes back to, you think Jesus knows the desire of your heart, right? He knows that you have a drive and that you want to play in the NHL and want to, play as long as you can. Well, continue to seek him out first, seek him, and not to say he's going to give you all your, have you win the Stanley Cup and have you sign for millions of dollars, but there's that's the center. That's the center. Like you got to find that, and I would encourage the guy, like, hockey and Christianity can mesh. Those can go together. Like doesn't have to be one or the other. Like we serve a big God. We serve a big God that, isn't really in the, business of thinking that, hockey's a small thing. No. He knows, like I said, he knows the desire of your heart. Let's go to the cross for that. Let's get on our knees and pray about it and seek him and try to dig deeper with him and then kind of, get to the rink, and that gives you, an uplifting that kind of passes your day-to-day circumstances, right?
You ever wonder what your life would be like if it was a little bit different? If the version of your life where faith isn't a part? I mean, have you ever considered that, like how different things would be?
No, I mean, I honestly haven't. It kind of goes back to, I was able to find a good group, and I was able to find my girlfriend who was, I was 17 years old when we started dating. She was 15, and we've been together. We got married in 2010. Been together, married 16 years, and been together 23 years. So just a lot of our life was, going and playing tennis together, and then going to church together, right? I mean, just like, I don't know, we really grew, and So that would be my encouragement to really anybody is, like that Bible verse says, iron sharpens iron, just as one person sharpens another, like find that group around you that's going to uplift you and give you hope and want to push you to seek Jesus.
Mm. Well, Nate, it's awesome. I know so many people spent so many years, cheering you on as a player. So it's cool to have the opportunity to just get to know you a little bit more in this regard. Thank you for taking time out of what I can't imagine as a dad of many kids is always a busy schedule, but appreciate you taking the time. Quickly, I mean, how can people get connected with you? Socials? I mean, you want to plug anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on social media. I'm not on it a ton, but I have Instagram, I have Facebook. You can seek me out there, or those would probably be the best two options, I would say. And I'm like I said, I'm an open book. Like I want to tell my story. I want others to feel encouraged by it, and and uplift you.
Awesome. Nate, thanks for taking the time to join us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you again so much for taking time out of your day to listen to Bigger Than Belief. If you're new here, we do this every single week. Real stories about real faith with real people. If you enjoyed this conversation, please take a moment to rate this podcast 5 stars wherever you're listening to us. Again, I'll make that effort to ask one more time because seriously, it makes such a difference. If you've been a listener for a while now, or maybe this is the second or third episode you've checked out, please, again, maybe consider dropping a review for us. This helps us, again, be seen by even more people than you might realize. Folks, we'll be right back here next Thursday, as we are every week, with another brand new episode. In the meantime, folks, please be well, and we will see you then.
Love podcasts? Love Minnesota?
Check out the WCCO podcast studio lineup.
Hear the top stories of the day with 4 things to know.
Discover top female athletes and teams from around the state on women in sports.
Dive into stories about faith and belief, from your local leaders to your neighbors next door, with Bigger Than Belief.
Stay in the know on the go with the WCCO podcast studio. Go to WCCO.com/podcasts.